And yes. All right, there we go. All right, so now, I'll be facilitating today. I'll be looking out for folks that maybe have questions in chat or whatever while Sydney's presenting, but our presenter today is Sydney Markham. She is our maven of sewing extraordinaire. So it will be very nice to see what all she has planned for us today. Let's see here if I can. So today we're going to be learning how to learn some basic hand sewing skills and create an item with the skills learned. It's great for any beginner, even if you don't know how to sew on a button, you're okay. But today with the skills we learn, we're also going to learn how to use a pin cushion. And just a brief review of how to use Zoom if you're not familiar with using it. In the bottom right, there's a toolbar, and in the bottom right, you can mute yourself. That way, if there's any kind of background noise or whatever, you can do that so it won't feed over into your microphone. You can turn the video on and off. We really encourage folks to turn on their cameras if possible, but it's not mandatory, especially for the demos. If you need feedback on your project, you can aim the camera at the project instead of your face if that's easier, you feel more comfortable with that. Also, you'll see how many participants are there. You can even participate with nonverbal cues such as, thumbs up, thumbs down, wave, raise hand, those sorts of things. And also you have the ability to edit your name. So if you just want to abbreviate it or whatever, you can. And also you can also chat in Zoom. So if you feel more comfortable asking a question in chat versus in person, feel free. I'll be monitoring the chat while Sydney is presenting. Just so that you know, since this is a unique program, we plan on recording today because this will be the one time that Sydney's offering it, and we want to have an opportunity for others to see it. We really appreciate your feedback and interactions because it really helps make for a very engaging video. But you can also, you don't have to show your face, and you can also alter your name within the Zoom if you don't want people to know your identity. That's completely fine. But we do appreciate the interaction. If you would like, also, we have a follow-up to this program. We've got a sewing basics program where you learn how to sew a drawstring bag, which is great for those sunglasses. Since the weather's getting warmer, be something nice to have on hand for those sunglasses so they don't get scratched up. And that'll be on Tuesday, April 12th, so about a month from now. And with further ado, thank you so much always for your support of Charlotte Mecklenburg Library and Independence Regional Library, which is where this program is coming to you from. And I'll go ahead and stop the share and turn it over to Sydney. Okay, I'm answering Leslie and Ari's question in chat. It does record the whole Zoom session, but again, you don't have to turn on your camera or your microphone, only if those would it be recorded. So again, if you want feedback on your sewing project, you don't have to show your face. You might want to just turn the camera down where you show your project instead of your face, but that way you can interact. And it gives us feedback as well. Does that help, Leslie?
Yeah, we do lots of Zoom programs,
okay.
And we really appreciate them. I just didn't know if it was just going to record the presenter's screen or if it records everyone's screen.
Yeah, it records everything because of the interactions and the feedback with the program.
Mm-hmm.
If that's okay. But again, you can mute your microphone if you don't want anything to come across from your side.
Yep, no problem.
Okay,
we really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
You bet. Okay. And without further ado, I turn it over to Sydney.
Thank you, Christy. So hello, everybody. My name is Sydney. I am one of the library aides here at Independence Regional, and I have been sewing I learned how to hand sew when I was probably about 8, and I made myself a small purse And then I learned to sew on a machine when I was in high school. So I've been sewing for about 12 years now. You can't see it because I have a sweater on, but I actually sewed the jumpsuit that I'm wearing today, just as kind of a good luck. But today we'll learn some hand sewing basics and we'll be making a pin cushion. So for most of the program, I will have my camera tipped down. I'm on a laptop. And again, Christy's here, so I probably won't be able to see the chat box. It'll be easier for me if you come off mute and ask any questions. But Christy will be able to see the chat box. And if it's something I need to look at, I'll just tilt the camera back up. But it's definitely easiest for you to see when I do this. Okay. I just wanted to share that this is the finished product. It's pretty small, but it'll hold a lot of pins. There's a little decorative element that, depending on how much time we have at the end, we can add that, or if you choose not to, that's fine. In your, I wanted to ask, is there anybody who did not pick up their kit? Because if that's the case, I'd like to walk you through just some of the supplies.
We did not pick up a kit, but I've got fabric and needle and button and string and thread.
Okay, so for the pin cushion, you can absolutely sew a square or triangle or whatever shape you like. Mine is a circle. It's about, these are the pieces of fabric that were in the kits. I would say it's about 4 inches in diameter.
Okay.
So if you would like it to be a circle, you can quickly cut. We're going to go over some of the basics first using just scrap fabric. So you don't need a circle to start off.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, and everybody else, the only thing that was not included in the kit is a pair of scissors. You'll need those when you are cutting the thread. And that's really about it. So I'm going to go ahead and show some basic sewing skills and stitches that we'll be using today. So if everybody wants to get out their little scrap pieces of fabric, there should be 2 small squares included. And so there are 2 needles actually, one that is attached to your circle fabric, and then one that is in the small sewing kit. The one in the small sewing kit has a very tiny eye, and we found that it's really difficult, even for me, to thread. So I definitely recommend that you use the slightly larger needle. It's definitely a little bit more beginner friendly. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and open up your little thread sewing kit. There are 2 buttons, a small, tiny little pin, and then 5 different colors of thread. So all of the fabrics are green and blue. I recommend that when we start sewing our pin cushion that you use either the white, yellow, or the green. And for the practicing of the skills, I recommend that you use the black or the red, because you'll be able to see the stitches really easily, and I'll be able to see and help you if there's something that you have questions about. So for now, we're going to go ahead and choose our color. I'm going to go with black today. And I'm just going to unwind a piece of thread that's about, I would say about 16 inches long. So it's not too long, but it'll give us enough room to work with. And you'll want to cut yourself a piece of thread. Again, this is just for practicing the stitches that we'll use. So it does not have to be perfect. And the first step, once we have the thread, is to place it through the eye of the needle. It might be a little hard to see because this camera quality is good, but it's not that good. So we'll want to put it through the eye of the needle. And I'm just going to put the freshly cut end of the thread through. It might take you a few tries. If you need to, sometimes wetting the end, just licking it, will actually make it stiffer and a little bit easier to go through. Okay, so once you have it placed through the eye of the needle, you'll want to pull the short end. And for practicing, I am going to leave one short end and one long tail. So the long tail is where we're going to tie our knot. There are times when I would tie both ends together if I wanted a stronger or a thicker thread. But for our back stitch, which is what we're about to learn, I really just want one because sometimes two pieces of thread can get a little bit bulky. Again, if at any time I'm going to quickly, if you have any questions, please feel free to come off mute. There's like a virtual raise hand option, or you can put something in the chat. So again, we're threading the needle. Right now we're tying a knot at the end, the long tail of thread. And once you've tied that first knot, it's usually a good idea to tie one or two more right at the same spot. If you can't get it right at the same spot, that's okay. The idea is just to stop the end of the thread from pulling all the way through. There we go. And I'm wondering, so on my end, I'm seeing Leslie and Ari's screen. I wonder, are you all able to see my video, or is it coming up small?
Oh, for us, it's fine.
Okay, good. Okay, no worries. I just wanted to make sure that it was as large as possible. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So once you have 2 to 3 knots tied at the end, we're going to take our scrap pieces of fabric. And it's a square, so it really does not matter which edge you go on. But we're going to do, let's say, fold about 1/2 inch so that you have kind of a gentle line marked on the fabric. Also, if you have a pen or a pencil available and you wanted to draw your own line, that's fine. I marked the stitch line on the pincushion fabric, but for the practice one, it's not that important. So if you want to just fold it, and then you'll have very slight line to kind of follow as we're practicing our back stitch. So the back stitch is what I used to sew our pieces together. And you can see when it's turned inside or right side out, you really can't even tell. It looks like it was machine stitched. There's no huge gaps. You don't really see any stuffing coming out. And when you're done, it really will look like the inside of any clothing item. So to start, you'll just want to bring your needle up through the bottom of the fabric. You're going up through both layers. And then pulling up, see, sometimes it doesn't catch all the way. You'll pull up. And the knot should hold. Just kind of looking briefly at the cameras. See if Firdos has her needle out. Perfect. So now for the back stitch, we're doing exactly what the name says. We're going to go down. I usually do about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. As you're practicing, do whatever size is easiest for you. And you want to do just a straight line down. Up. And then there we go. Now I will start on the wrong side. Need to reset my needle very quickly. Okay, so once you have your needle pulled up through the fabric, you're going to go down the other side so that you have one small stitch that looks just like that, very tiny. And then you're going to go up. Now, again, when you're going up, you can kind of hold the fabric taut and you're going on the underside. And you want to poke, mine's about 1/8 of an inch that time. They're not all going to be the same size. So when you bring the thread up, you see there's a gap between where the thread is and where that last stitch was. So now this is the back stitch part. We're going to make a stitch right at the spot where that last stitch went down so that it's continuing that line. And it's starting to kind of look like a seam. So again, once you've gone down and pulled it all the way through, you'll want to go up from the bottom about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch, and then back down right next to where that last stitch ended. So again, as you're going along, it looks like a straight line. And if those of you who have your cameras on would like to show or have any questions, please just let me know. So right now we are practicing the back stitch. This is what we'll use to sew our 2 circles together. And it's actually a really sturdy stitch. You'll see after you've done a few, if you want to open up the 2 pieces of fabric.
Miss Sydney, so do you end up with a double length stitch on the back?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
So you can see the back side, like there's a very clear right and a wrong side. It just
Yeah.
because it's all going to be inside anyway.
Yeah.
But that's what's making it so strong is
Okay.
a lot of us, when we tried sewing before or when we were kids, we would do just kind of up and down and it's not a solid stitch.
Yeah.
It looks really nice and clean on that side. And on that side, it's sturdy because we're going back over the same spot twice.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I'll give that just a few more seconds. Is anybody needing more time to practice? You don't need a lot. Right now I have maybe 1 inch of stitches. But really I just want you to be able to get the hang of it. You'll definitely have a lot of time to practice when we actually make the pincushion, because that is the stitch that we do for the majority of it. Okay. So now, once we've practiced the back stitch, and again, you can see when you pull on it, it holds together. We're going to practice binding off. So this way, once we're done sewing, we don't, it doesn't come undone. We're just going to make a knot. So if you should have ended with your thread on the bottom. You can flip it over, and where there's those like double stitches, you can actually go underneath the last stitch that you made. Go under with your needle, and then take that extra thread, and you're going to loop it around the edge. So again, you're going under the thread on the back side, and you don't want to catch the fabric, you're just catching the thread. You're taking that thread that's left on the needle, you're looping it over, and once it's looped over, you're pulling the needle all the way through so that it is knotted. See. I usually do it once more just to make sure it's really secure. Under, loop the thread, pull the needle through. Okay. And it's sturdy enough that when you pull on it, you can see a little bit, but again, it's a pincushion. It won't go under too much strain. So we have a nice little seam right there. You can go ahead and cut that thread off. Let's see. Pull my camera up. Kind of look at everybody's screens. Oh, that looks good. Okay. All right. Is anybody needing more time to practice the back stitch? If not, we can move on to the second stitch that we'll be needing with the pincushion. All right. So again, if you need to rethread your needle, now is the time. The next stitch that we're going to be doing is called a, I'll show you on this one. This is called a slip stitch. See, this one you can see right on the edge, the thread is actually visible. And that's because in order to stuff the pincushion, we actually sew the fabric the right sides together, and then we flip it inside out. And then after we've stuffed it, we'll have to close it. So a slip stitch is used really commonly when you're closing like a pillow, or if you want the stitches to be visible. So let me grab my thread. Okay. So right now I'm just rethreading my needle. This one doesn't need to be very long. If you have thread left over from the back stitch, you can continue using that. At most, you need maybe 10 inches of thread. There we go. I'm just tying the knot on the end. So for the slip stitch, again, we're going to use our scrap fabric. And in this case, we can just use two edges that fit closely together, the same way we would if we were, when we stitch the pincushion closed. The stitch is pretty simple. There's no back and forth. It's just kind of making small stitches that are close together. Like in this one, again, you can see it and they're really close, and that's what makes it tight so that the stuffing can't get out. So now that we have our needle and thread again, and I'm going to use just this edge right here. It'll be a little different when we're sewing on the pincushion, but I'll demonstrate for us. Actually, you know what? No, that's fine. So we'll go on the edge, and you'll want to put your 1/8 of an inch from the edge, because the idea is that you're creating a really tight seal. So 1/8 from the edge. And for this one, you're bringing your needle over and under about 1/8 of an inch from where that first stitch started. And you're pulling through. And you can see that the stitch is visible. It'll look a little bit different on the stuffed pincushion. And then again, our stitch is coming up. We'll go over and then under. And then coming up again. At this point, you kind of just have to watch the thread and make sure it doesn't catch on anything. and that you're pulling tight enough to make sure that there's nothing on the other side. So for the slip stitch, both sides really look exactly the same. I'm going to do maybe 2 more just to show. And then again, if anybody has any questions or would like me to look at their work, please let me know. And with the slip stitch, you can see when you pull it, it kind of pulls that edge taut, and you can see it curving in on itself, which is going to be exactly what we want for sealing our pincushion. Okay. So there is my slip stitch. Like I said, you can see the edge has curled over. When you try to pull it apart, again, you can see those stitches there. So that's what's creating that tight bind to where it's not going to fall apart easily. And these are 2 stitches that our last programs were more about repairing clothing. So they're really useful for repairing maybe seams. I've used a slip stitch a lot when I'm putting in a zipper, or if you just need to tack something down really quickly. Maybe you need to shorten a dress or something. This isn't a quick and easy stitch to use. Okay. Everyone's good. We'll have practiced both of the stitches that we'll need for our pincushion, and we can actually get started. So it'll take, we'll see how long it takes for you all to finish. And if you don't finish tonight, that's not a big deal because you'll have learned the skills that you need to complete it. So then right now, I'm going to ask that you get out your 2 pieces of fabric. They are the same size, so you can put them together. It's really important that what's considered the right sides are facing each other. So again, on fabric, usually there's the lighter side where the print isn't as strong. You want that side to be the one that you're looking at as you sew. Yes. Did you have a question, Firdaus?
Yeah, can you show me one more time the second stitch?
Yes. Okay. So it is, thread my needle very quickly. So for the slip stitch, it is starting, you have your stitch, your thread coming up from the bottom. You want to take your needle over the edge of the fabric and bring it back up very close to that other stitch. And then you pull up and it'll go over the edge of the fabric so that when you pull it a little bit tighter, it kind of curls it in. So again, once you have that thread coming up, you take the needle back over, you go under, and it helps me to look at the top as I'm, there we go, the top as I'm poking to make sure that the needle is in the right spot that I want. And then pull up. So as you're practicing, you should kind of see your thread going over the edge there. And when you pull it tighter, you'll see the fabric curling over, which is exactly how the finished product looks. There, hopefully you all can see that. Okay, was that helpful?
Yeah, do I have to poke the needle next to that stitch?
Let me see. Do you mind? Yeah, go ahead and so you have it pulled over the edge. Yes.
Yeah, this is
Now you'll want to take the needle over, yeah, and under, just like that.
yeah, next to.
Perfect. And then you pull it up. Okay. That's it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, you have got it. So now I think everybody is ready. The first stitch that we will be using is going to be the back stitch again. Did anyone have any more questions on that one or need me to show it again? Okay. So now we are going to change our color of thread. Again, I recommend either the white, green, or yellow because it matches the fabric pretty nicely. I used the green on mine, but any of the three will work. I think I'm going to use the yellow this time. Actually, I'll do the white. It'll be a little bit easier for you all to see. Okay. For this part, the circles are the perfect size because you will have just enough thread in the one color that you choose to use. If for any reason you run out of thread, that's not a big deal. You can just change to a different color. So you do actually want to unwind the whole thing, and it can get a little bit tangled. Okay. So I've unwound. I'm going with the white thread this time. And it's a pretty long piece. It's about 2.5 feet, maybe 3. So the first thing we need to do is, again, thread our needle. And another thing, what I find, the eyes of these needles are large enough that if you're having trouble getting the cut end of the thread through, you can actually fold the thread. I usually hold it between 2 fingers and I'll pull up with the needle and then I pinch because the folded edge doesn't fray the same way that the cut one does. And then it's skinny enough that you can slip it through. That's just another way to thread your needle. It's the way I prefer, especially this thread. It's not the highest quality, so it does tend to break apart a little bit when you're trying to thread the needle. So now have, again, we're pulling one end of the thread slightly longer than the other. We're not going to tie the ends together because we would run out of thread pretty quickly. And it also can get a little bit more tangled, especially when we're doing the back stitch. So right now, everybody should be threading their needle and tying that knot at the end. Since this will be our finished product, I recommend definitely getting probably 3 knots. Since these needles are a little bit larger, it means that the knots need to be a little bit larger. Okay, so I have 2 knots and I'm tying 1 more. Okay. So I am good. I have my knot tied. I have my thread. It's a little bit more difficult when you're working with a longer piece of thread. It can get tangled, so I recommend kind of pushing anything else out of the way that could easily tangle it up. And I will leave probably about that much, I would say, a 6-inch difference between the short end and the long end of the thread. And you can kind of adjust that as we sew along. Okay. How are we doing? Does everyone have their needles threaded? Let's see. I think so. Okay. So now you're going to want to sew. So there's, depending on what color fabric you have, you'll either have green marker or blue marker showing you where we're going to stitch along. As we're stitching, it might be helpful to use that small needle from your thread pack to actually kind of pin the two pieces of fabric together. That's what I'm going to do just because it can get a little bit slippery. And it doesn't have to be perfect, of course, but this definitely helps to keep more of a circle shape. So I'm just the same way that in first needle was holding these pieces of fabric together. We're going to use the smaller needle and hold them together so that even if it moves around a little at the edges, you know that it's secured at the middle and it'll be about the right size. So you'll also see that there is a mark about 1.5 inches wide without the marker. So that's where we'll stop and start stitching because we need to leave that open to actually stuff the pin cushion. So again, we're starting out with the back stitch here. So you want to go hold the fabric so that the marker side is up facing you. We're taking the needle underneath and you want to push the needle up right about where the marker starts and pull all the way up. So this is where you'll know if you tied a big enough knot. So I'm pulling not too hard, but I'm able to see that my knot stays on the other side. And again, we are now going to do the back stitch. Okay. Start on the outside. Okay, so if you're holding the opening away from you, you'll want to start to your right of it. That'll be the best way to start doing the back stitch. I started on the wrong side. There we go. Okay. So again, I've started my first stitch right about at that marker point, hold all the way through. And for this one, try to keep the stitches about 1/4 inch. So a little bit shorter than those marker lines, because it'll make sure that when we stuff it, it actually keeps the stuffing from sticking out. So now we're just using our back stitch scale that we just learned. It'll be a little bit different this time because instead of going in a straight line, we are curving. So that's another reason why it's good to keep your stitches a little bit shorter. It's a little bit hard to see with the white thread, but mine are about 1/4 inch long. You can make them a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, depending on what's easiest or best for you. But the shorter stitches definitely make it easier to get the curve of the circle. And when you're pulling your thread through, make sure that nothing's getting caught. That's why, again, I said we're only going to use one length of thread. We're not going to double up because this kind of prevents that tangling that can happen. Okay. So as we're sewing, if anybody has any questions, if anybody wants to share book recommendations or movie recommendations, because I think we'll probably be working on this part for about 15 minutes.
I will get a book to share with you. Just a moment.
Oh, okay. And I'll also, for this part, I'll tip it up so you can actually see my face. I already have a pin cushion, so if I don't finish this tonight, that's not a big deal. I'm here to help you all. And again, if anybody wants to see, for me to see what they're working on, you don't have to put the camera on your face. You can just kind of hold it up like that or tilt it down the way I have. And one nice thing about the back stitch is if you realize you're sewing a little bit crooked, you can kind of sew back over that exact same spot to straighten it out, because the fabric will take whichever stitch is closest to the center. So if you need to make the circle a little smaller at any point, you can fix that. So as you're sewing along and you need to adjust, you can pull the other thread. Oh, yes. Okay, so beginner sewing books. So actually, Christy, well, I have a list that I've created, and Christy will be sharing that with you all in the Dropbox. And let me actually pull up the list. So Charlotte Mecklenburg Library has a lot of books about sewing. The ones that I have on my list are mostly about hand sewing and repairing clothing. Maybe someday we could venture out into machine sewing, which is, that's actually what I prefer. It's just a little bit faster. But hand sewing is a great place to start, and it's a skill that I still use. It's very useful for repairing clothing or small projects like this.
Here's the book I wanted to share. It's called Softies.
Cute little felt plushies.
Yeah, and it's all hand sewing. It's really basic. And then it also has good instructions for you if you want to, design your own. And then I think, like just kind of the tricky part about sewing is like, see where the arm joins.
Yes.
The body is, doing those curves. And this has really good instructions, and it's, super easy to follow. And this is adorable. You'll love this. This will make a great pin cushion.
Okay. Oh, that's so cute.
Thank you.
I also enjoy baking in my free time in addition to sewing. When I was younger, I took cake decorating classes with my mom. So that's something the staff at the library gets to enjoy every now and then.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I used to do cake decorating and wedding cakes.
I'm looking at these, and I'm guessing it's the exact same stitches. I would think before you turn it right side out. And then
This is super cute.
Cute, a little ice cream sandwich. I was going to say, I definitely saw the slip stitch on that little whale, the gray one on the cover. Because I know people who do make like plushies, that's what they have to do, the same thing we're doing, where you have to leave a hole open to stuff. And even if you machine sew, you have to hand sew this. You can't get a presser foot right up there. Like, it just wouldn't happen. I've made rice-filled neck warmers before, And that's something that I've used the slip stitch to kind of sew shut, because again, it's really hard not to spill rice everywhere when you're making one of those. And it would be even worse if I tried to put it next to my sewing machine. All right. So right now we have 25 minutes left on the program, which is plenty of time because stuffing really shouldn't take very long. And then the slip stitch, that'll be a really short piece, about 1.5 inches wide. So really it's the back stitch that is the long part, like I said. And Christy shared the reading recommendations in the chat. So I'll go ahead and click on those and I can kind of read off some. Oh, that's strange. There we go. Okay.
And did you read the Little House on the Prairie books?
Yes, I did.
And so did you love it when the mom was hand sewing their matching dresses?
Yes. Oh, yes. And I was fortunate enough to read my mother's copies. They might even have been passed down from somebody else in her family. So I was reading like 30, 40-year-old books. They showed it. We had to tape a couple together, but
Well loved.
yes, exactly. You know, some of the staff here at the library, one of our coworkers, she loves the TV show Little House on the Prairie. And somebody the other day was talking about it because they didn't realize that Laura Ingalls Wilder was a real person.
That's funny. Which library are you guys at?
We're at Independence Regional. I know you said that you're not in the Charlotte area, but are you familiar?
Yeah.
Okay.
But who are your children's librarians there?
It is Erin and Chelsea.
Okay, and so you mean Erin Holmes?
Yes.
Yeah, and so we do the art program with her.
Yes.
It's so amazing. She's absolutely incredible.
Let's say Erin is.
And then we've done programs with Chelsea too. And then they do a really good children's story time. I think they've done some puppet shows.
They definitely have, because they'll warn us. They'll be like, "Oh, there's some strange noises." Oh, and Christy shared the Independence Regional branch page. Yeah, I know we have at least one person who Independence is not their home branch, but if you're ever in the area, people always tell us that our staff are very nice and helpful, and I would agree with that. We also get
we have the art program tomorrow with Miss Erin.
fun. Yeah, the Zoom videos. This was my only experience with programming for the library because I started working here shortly before the pandemic started. And there are some times where I think it would be really helpful to be in person, but I also know it's nice because we get to reach people who wouldn't normally be able to come.
Yeah, we love it. We're in Iowa.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. The first people we met were through Imaginon, and that was Mr. Darius. And then Jen, their director, she's the one that helped me get signed up for programs.
Yes.
And then from there, we were doing daily, 3 times a week. At the end of the week, they were doing children's programs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we met Miss Carmela and Miss Teresa at Sugar Creek, and we consider them family. They're awesome. And then Miss Becca at Imaginon, and then Miss Sydney just left Plaza Middlewood, and she works at Imaginon now.
That's correct.
And she is my daughter's reading buddy.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, so we just met with her. She's awesome.
I'm also part of the Reading Buddies program, which.
Oh, cool. Isn't it great?
Yes, I was going to say for anybody who is listening and maybe has children or has nieces or nephews, it is an awesome children's program that really started because of the pandemic, where children get to read one-on-one with one of the adults at the library once a week. And I work with a third grader. He gets to pick the books and we just go back and forth. So it's a really great way for them to practice sounding words out, using, voice, and just kind of learning new vocabulary.
Yeah, it is super fun. Her first reading buddy was with Miss Hannah. I think she's at North County. And it was amazing. Like, she got to see Ari go from CVC words, cat, hat, mat, to saying words like remarkable and outstanding. And it was just so precious to see her read with this person and see her transform. It was just really touching.
Yes, absolutely. I am almost done with mine, but I do not expect you all to be moving as quickly as me. Just wanted to check in and see maybe if somebody feels comfortable showing me what they've got, or if anybody has any questions. Oh, that looks really good. Oh, yes. Wow. Yeah, that looks amazing. You're gonna be done very soon. Is it okay? Like, you're really getting the hang of it as you're going along? Glad to see that. Thank you for sharing.
I really want to attend the sewing classes in person. Have you any
Yes.
suggestions? So me and my daughter loves sewing. So in my free time, I really enjoy it. So I'm looking for the classes who can teach, basics things about the sewing. So I live in university area. So do you know the any people who take in-person classes?
I know right now the libraries, I know we're not doing in-person programming yet. We might see that change in the next month or two, but we haven't heard for sure anything. I wonder, let me look and see. Because I know like craft stores like Joann's and Michael's will usually have sewing classes. I'm not sure. I would think they might be offering them in person just because they make money off of that. Let me see if there's a Michael's in the university area. I know that Joann's is down in Pineville, so that's not. There is a Michael's. Not too far. Oh yeah. Oh,
Let
and
me check with the Michaels if they're providing the classes in person.
There is a Michael's. Yeah, actually right across from a university and off of the main WT Harris. Let's see if they're offering, because I don't know of any. Let me say, I know of local yarn shops, but I don't think they would be teaching sewing skills. Maybe if we go to in person, then this can be offered eventually in person. Let's see. Okay, so Michael's does offer in-person classes now. Let me see if they have any sewing ones. So that nothing is happening in the Charlotte area. That might be something to keep an eye on, as well as the library. We were in really high case numbers there after the holidays, and that things have started to go down. It's just a matter of the higher ups call. It's definitely not a decision that we get to make. So we'll have to wait and see. how are you doing? I know you said that you'd never sewed a button before, so I know these are new skills for you. Is it coming along okay? Any questions? Also, don't feel like you have to answer because I kind of put you on the spot there.
I had to pop outside for a minute. Ari's making some magical things out there. Can you tell me, is your jumpsuit knit or is it woven?
It is, okay, so I have a sweater on over me.
Yeah.
Here, I'll give you guys a little. So it is actually a
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
lemon print, they're pants. So it's one piece.
That's adorable.
Thank you. It's just like, I go to Joann's and usually I'll buy the quilting fabric because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And
So that's a woven fabric.
Yes, this is a woven fabric.
Yeah.
Sewing with knit fabric is a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
Especially whether it's hand or machine, just because it has the stretch. For machine sewing, they make special ballpoint needles so that they don't like pull the threads apart or stretch it too much. But I prefer to sew with woven fabrics. I just think they're more comfortable and easy.
I find using the sewing machine is really challenging for me because even if I'm using a woven fabric like we're using tonight,
Yes.
I always end up with one piece longer than the other.
Yes.
It's really frustrating.
I have found part of it, I believe, is when you're cutting your pieces. Do you sew any garments or is it mostly like smaller projects?
I mostly like in knitting and in sewing,
Mhm.
it's mostly stuff that's well, knitting wouldn't be on the fly because that obviously takes too long. But I rarely am using patterns. And so I'll start out with 2 lengths of fabric that match.
Mhm.
But as I sew, I somehow end up stretching one of them, even if it's a non-stretch fabric, and, come out with this less than ideal result. And usually I'm making costumes. And so I find polar fleece extraordinarily easy to work with, very forgiving. And, you don't have to worry about fraying and you can really put stuff together quickly.
Mhm. Do you use pins or clips to hold the fabric together as you sew?
Yes, definitely. Lots of them.
Yeah, I've seen people like just, threading it through and I don't know how they manage to keep the.
Yeah, and even with all those pins and everything, I still end up having to stop, reset the pins, and I end up with this bunch of fabric on the top piece that's excessive.
I wonder, and are your stitches okay? Because the only other thing I would think is maybe it would be thread tension or maybe press or foot tension.
Yeah, probably both. I have no idea. This fellow here named Bob, he's outstanding. He quilts t-shirts. And so he'll take a t-shirt, remove the front of it, and put in, like maybe 20 quilted t-shirt pieces. And all the seams are great. Nothing puckers. It all lays like a dream. And I just can't imagine how you do that.
Yeah. Again, wool or knit fabrics are not my forte. So I'm wondering how everybody else is doing. I've come to the end of my second marker. If you aren't quite to the end and you're really close, and that looks good. Okay, almost there, almost there. I would recommend going a little bit more so you have, I would say, less than 2 inches to slip stitch, just because it'll be easier to stuff it if it's not too big of a hole, and it will be easier to close it up as well. It'll be a little bit of a straight edge where we slip stitch. That's another reason why you don't want it to be too much, because then it would kind of change the shape entirely. So as I'm finishing up on my end, I'm just going to tie the knot the same way we talked about, where you put the needle underneath, looking on the wrong side of the fabric to where you can see the stitches and it's less clean and neat. Putting it under, looping that needle over, that thread over the needle, and then pulling all the way through. And especially for this one, I would recommend doing it twice, just because this is something that you'll actually want to use, hopefully. And just for the sake of time, I am going to cut the thread on there and show you, if you're still working on your back stitches, that is perfectly all right. Like I said, you've already learned how to do a slip stitch. So you'll be able to finish this whether or not it's a little bit after the program itself has ended. So once you have gotten most of the most of it sewed together, you'll have that little bit of an opening. And remember, we sewed with the right sides, so the pretty sides of our fabric together. And now we want to just turn it inside out. Same way you do when your socks are inside out after the wash. And I will say, normally when I'm sewing, especially a machine, I will, on the inside, if it's a curved edge, you can, if you like, do some small clips, not too close to the stitches themselves, but it'll kind of help keep the shape. For this, it's not the most important because we're going to stuff it. And also it's a pincushion, so it doesn't really have to be a perfect circle. But that's just something that as you learn more about sewing, you'll see that when edges are curved, in order to help them bend the way they should, you can cut little notches into them. So once you've turned it, you'll want to kind of take your fingers or a pencil or something and push those seams out.
Anybody know where my
When you look at it, it looks like this. Mostly round. And like I said, we would have a little piece where we'll do our split stitch. That's a little bit of a straight edge, but it doesn't really make a big difference once it's stuffed. The amount of stuffing all of your kids should be enough. It might be
Well,
so I'm going to take my stuffing. Yeah, it's definitely more than enough. So this is how much you all should have, about the same amount. I like to think of it as you want like a handful, because that's about the size of the pincushion. And it's not a big deal if you overstuff it or understuff it, because it's going to serve the same purpose. So just, when I made my sample one, you can get a lot more stuffing in here than you would imagine. And it's easier for me to break off smaller pieces at a time, especially because we are working with kind of a small opening. And just kind of putting them in there and pushing it down with your fingers as you go. I know we are getting close to the end of our program. So I wanted to kind of check in and see, is anybody needing help with anything? Are there questions I can answer before it's time for us to part ways? So it's really starting to come together. And like I said, I did not end up needing all the stuffing. You want it to feel like a firm pillow. It doesn't have to be so full that you can't squish it. You definitely don't want it to be like floppy, because then it's not really going to hold the pins in. So you can see now it has filled out those edges. Like I said, you can really see the shape of the circle, and you can kind of see our stitches on the edge, but not in a bad way. So now I'm going to show you all how to close it up. So you'll just want to fold those two ends in. The green one's kind of already folded down, because we don't want the raw edge of the fabric sticking out. We want the nice folded edge so that it doesn't end up fraying. And you want to kind of sandwich the two pieces together. For me, I'm going to use a different color thread just because I'm running low on my white. I'm going to go with green this time. For this one, you'll want a piece of thread, I would say 10 to 12 inches long. It's a pretty small area that we're going to stitch to close, but we're also going to make sure the stitches are close together so that it stays shut and no stuffing comes out. So I have about a foot of my green thread. Threading my needle. Not. I want to be able to show you what it's like to do the slip stitch on the stuffed pincushion, because before we were practicing just on, a flat piece of fabric, and it's the same stitch, but it feels a little bit different practicing on a 3D object. So I have tied 3 knots, because again, it's important that this one does not come loose. So now here at the edge, like I said, I want to pinch those in. It's okay if a little bit of the stuffing sticks out. It's really not a big deal. You can always pull it out or even cut little pieces if you don't like the way they're sticking out. So right there on the edge where it's coming together, what we want to do is slip our needle on the inside so that we hide our knotted end. So I'm just making a tiny little stitch, because then I can kind of tuck that knot on the inside and it won't be sticking straight out. So after I've done that, that's where I'm going to do my slip stitch, which, as you remember, is just going over the edge in tiny, tiny amounts. So this one will probably be even smaller than your practice one, because like I said, we want to make sure that it's really tightly closed. And it also looks nicer if it's closer to the edge of the fabric. So I'm holding flat and pinching it with my left hand while I'm going up, over, and back up. Again, this one is pretty simple because it's just, once you get that motion down, it's very repetitive. Pinching it tight along that edge. That's honestly the hardest part. If you do have any pins at home, or if you want to use your extra needle, you could even try without poking yourself, is the tricky part, to kind of pin It actually works really nicely to pin the edge together so that you don't have to hold it. So that means as you're sewing, you're not worrying as much about the stuffing coming out. So you can see there, my stitches are really close together, the same way they were in the sample. And I don't go very far down, like I'm not going all the way here because then it would change the shape too much. I'm trying to go just along the edge enough to catch that fabric and keep it secure, but also keeping that nice round shape. Okay. And I see it is 7:17. So of course, if anybody has anywhere they need to be, please feel free to log off. And if anybody has any last questions or wants to share, I'll put the camera back up. If you want to share what you've been working on, get any feedback on your stitches, now is the time.
I just wanted to say thank you. We really appreciate it. And that was a lot of fun.
You. And we will, as Christy mentioned, the next one will be, it'll also be using the back stitch, maybe a little bit of top stitching, but we'll be making a little small, like 3x6 drawstring bag. Can be used for lots of things, but I'll probably end up using mine for my sunglasses.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
You too. Thanks, Leslie and Ari.
Bye-bye.
I really enjoyed this session. Thank you for the program. I really like it. I learn 2 stitches.
That's
I'm
great.
so glad you join us. And thank you for asking questions. It really helps. That's what I'm here for. And hopefully, if you're interested, we do have that second program. You can sign up on our website the same way you did for this one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm going to sign up for the next session because I really like it.
Good. And after that one, we'll see. Maybe we'll offer a few more. And like I said, maybe eventually we will be back in person, because then I can actually see your work and be able to help you guys a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that day.
I know.
Okay, and I'm posting the link for the next class. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Christy. I was going to say, if you have any questions, I know Christy, of course, sent out the email with the Zoom link. I'm not sure if my email is shown in that, but if not, you can reach out to Christy and she'll put you in touch with me. I'm more than happy to answer questions about sewing.
Oh yeah, I think I included you on that. So I think we're both on there.
Yes. Oh, did you do all right? We didn't learn how to sew a button this time, but we might for the next one. So like I said, pinning that edge down with the needle helped big time. Make sure that when you get to the end, you're knotting the same way. And then when you pull it out, it should look like that. You'll see little pointies, not really a big deal, because it's a mostly circular, squishy, perfect sewing pincushion. And you can put your new sewing needles in it.
Looks awesome, Sydney.
One I now have two.
We learned something new the other day. One of our colleagues shared with us that the reason why the pin cushion is in the shape that it is that for a while at the turn of the century, from when the 19th century changed to the 20th century, it was very popular to show off your tomatoes in your house. For some reason, that was a fashion statement. And so pin cushions were sewn in that shape. because they looked like a tomato. I had no idea.
I'm here and I have to laugh because that's what my pincushion is at home. It is one of the classic tomato shapes.
Did anyone else have any questions? I don't know if they heard this, Sydney, or if they must still be working on their pincushion.
So I was gonna say, I know a little bit faster, but I know your does said when she showed hers, she was almost done. So
Wow. Okay. Well, I had a wonderful time. I hope you did.
yes, very, very nice way to come back to work after a vacation.
Yeah. Very lovely. Jumping into something fun.
I agree.
How did you do, Ferdowsi? Did you have an opportunity to finish your pincushion?
As you can see, I have
Oh, you made it.
put the stuffing here.
Yeah,
Yes, you're almost there.
that's
Yeah, I'm
perfect.
almost there, yeah.
Fantastic.
Also, how do you pronounce your name? Because I believe we might be saying it wrong.
E silent, Firdaus.
Firdaus. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, yours looks really good.
How do you feel, Ethel? Do you feel like you're making progress? She might have stepped away for a moment.
Yeah, this one's a lot poofier than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Really different, but I like them. I think they're cute.
Very practical too. It's like the best of both worlds. You know, it's nice looking and it's practical.
Why, when I was trying to pick which projects to do, it had to be something small and something simple, but also I wanted to be like, because sometimes you make things and you're like, okay, I will never ever use that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're learning how to sew, what better thing to make than a pincushion?
And you'll use the pincushion for other things. So it's a perfect segue.
Actually, the first thing I sewed in my high school sewing class. That was our first project, was a hand sewn pincushion.
Wow, that's smart.
My teacher, she's been teaching that for maybe 20 years. And she retired my senior year, but it was wonderful. I took that class all 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you picked up all kinds of ideas and tools and tips.
Yeah. By the end, they kind of just let me, they let me take the sewing class when it was actually a math class that she was teaching. So I could just sit in the back by myself working on my projects, and it was wonderful. Now, all these years later, I'm still getting to share my skills with others.
Did anyone else have any questions? If not, do we want to go ahead and wrap up for the evening?
I think so.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for coming out this evening. We really appreciate your participation. And we will be posting this to the library's YouTube page and the digital branch page soon. Stay tuned. I posted the links in chat. Feel free to sign up for the next class that's coming up in April. It'll be about 4 weeks from now. And I've also posted the link in chat as well. Thanks again, and we hope to see you again next time.